I am Don Tess, better known as the Dawn of Beer.
And I'm M. Sutter, better known as Pints and Panels.
Welcome to episode 81 of the All About Beer podcast. Every 2 weeks, we talk with leading experts and take a deep dive into one topic in beer. This week on the show, we are going to talk about the state of the beer industry. Ooh, scary. But before we do that, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow us on social media at allaboutbeer. And if you would like to support this show, please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to support this show and others. So, Em, we've both heard that beer's down. It's pretty hard not to hear that if you're in the industry, as we are. But you're out and about. Like, I know you do pop-up shops and such. So what's your sense of the vibe out there?
I mean, I feel like everything maybe be overblown a little. I don't know, but then
Hmm.
because I'll go to tasting rooms and sometimes they're empty. I've been also hearing that tasting rooms now are like dead after 6 p.m. Like nobody goes out after a certain time period, but they're
Oh,
like jamming at like 2, 3, 4.
really?
Yeah.
You talking
So
weekdays or weekends?
I'm talking, I think like, well, I'm
All the
talking just not all the time, but like, I'm talking like weekends, like Friday night, Saturday nights, like things get popping and then I think everyone goes to do something else. But I don't know.
That's interesting. Well,
It's, yeah, how is it up in Canada?
uh, I actually don't know. I keep to myself. Even when I go to a tap room, I tend to keep to myself. So, um, I'm not aware of what's going on. I'm a nerd,
Well,
you know this.
well, we got two guests that'll help us know
Exactly.
what's going on.
And
So that's
I
good.
love these two guests that we have because
So do I.
they work in this and they analyze numbers. This is what they do.
Hmm.
So it won't be conjecture what they tell us. They will tell us actual facts. But before we get into that conversation, if you would like to help support the All About Beer podcast, please reach out to us at podcast@allaboutbeer.com. Speaking of supporting the show, here is a word from our sponsors.
This program is brought to you by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, where trailblazing runs in the family. From crafting a movement with their iconic pale ale to taking the IPA haze craze nationwide with Hazy Little Thing, it's an adventurous spirit you can taste in every sip. Find your next favorite beer wherever fine beverages are sold. With new brews for every season, there's always something to discover. Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. Still family owned, operated, and argued over.
Ariana, Callista, Tradition, Mule Melon, Select. RahrBSG sources these German hop varieties and more directly from German growers through their cooperative organization, HVG. Founded in 1953, HVG has grown to be one of the most important hop suppliers worldwide. In addition to supplying a large part of the German hop crop to brewers worldwide, HVG also processes hops into pellets, extract, and other hop products. Where would beer be without HVG? For the best selection, contact RahrBSG.
Jessica Infante is the managing editor at Brewbound, a multimedia trade publication covering the beer industry. She joined Brewbound in 2019 after nearly a decade in various marketing roles at a leading craft brewery. Before beer, Jess was a newspaper reporter at the Jersey Shore. She holds a bachelor's degree in magazine journalism from the S.I. Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse University and a master's degree in integrated marketing communication from Emerson College. Jess is a certified Cicerone and lives in Salem, Massachusetts with her husband and daughter. Christopher Shepard writes and edits, follows trends, and analyzes data for the family of beer industry trade publications from Beer Marketers Insights. He often leads BMI's legal coverage, offers in-depth looks at alcohol policy and science as editor of Alcohol Issues Insights, and serves as senior editor of craft-focused newsletter Craft Brew News. He frequently presents at industry conferences and plays key roles in building BMI's annual data reports and webinars. Welcome to the show, Jessica and Chris.
Thanks.
Thanks.
This is going to be fun because we're going to start with doom and gloom.
Sorry, that's very
Uh,
funny. Okay, yes.
there does seem to be a lot of doom and gloom in the overall beer space. Is that, the media taking a story and running too wild with it, or is that doom and gloom actually legit?
Hmm.
Jess, you want to start?
Oh, sure. Well, Don, that's a great way to phrase this question. And I do think the doom and gloom is legit. things are pretty rough right now in terms of sales in the off-premise, on-premise, across the board, dollars, volume, everything is pretty rough and rocky. Chris, we can talk about this, but I don't necessarily think this is a forever thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But yeah, it is bad.
It is
Yeah.
bad.
Agree. I think, you're always going to see certain news sources, pushing that envelope, pushing that story beyond. I think as I was thinking about this and sort of thinking about some of the topics across the industry, I think there are a lot of instances, right, where some of the reporting or some of the discussion or some of the rhetoric is a little bit sort of over the tips of the skis. But it's hard. We actually this is this has come up in the last week or two a couple times within the office here is like someone wrote the line "It's rough out there" again in the piece, and we've started being like, hey, do we want to use this same exact sentence again? Because we're using it a whole lot. So as one weird metric of just how difficult it is. The thing I would say is that it's also not just a beer thing. It's not just a craft beer thing. It's not just a beer thing. It's also sort of not just an alcohol thing, although the alcohol industry is as a whole in a pretty difficult spot. But it's bigger than that too. It's economic in a lot of ways, and I think, and I'm curious about your thoughts about this, Jess. That's one of the reasons that I feel like it's not a forever ever thing, right? That's one of the reasons I sort of tip towards. I think this is more of one of those cyclical type things. The cyclical versus structural debate is something those of us covering the industry are a little bit exhausted from hearing about, I think, but I think a good portion of it is macroeconomic, uh, and so that isn't going to be the case forever. Might not end anytime super de duper soon, but uh, it's not a forever thing. I agree.
Okay. Good. Phew.
Well, this was, yeah, I had a so like the last time we were here was like 2004, 2005, right? Like when there was kind of a flat line. And then like 5 years later, everyone was like, we're back. Um, is it short-lived or are we talking about like generational, which is like,
That's a
ugh.
good question. I think last summer was really rough too. Sorry, Chris, to keep using that word. And I think we thought this year would be like, okay, well, last year's comps are really tough, so things should be a little bit softer this time around. When your sales were down so much the year before, let's say you sell a normal amount in the current year and numbers look a little bit better, but that is
Right.
not what is happening. So I do, my hunch is that this will be a couple years, but I don't think it's going to be like a decade or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think my question back to you, Em, would be like, depends on what you're talking about, right? Like in terms of who it's rough for and who's sort of being hit in terms of how long it lasts. That it sort of depends on, are you talking about small breweries? Are you talking about craft? Are you talking about the beer category as a whole? Are you talking about consumption writ large?
Yeah, there's so much too. Like there's like who's it good for? Is it good for like the one guy that owns the brewery or is it like regional? Like there's so many different scales of beer that like when you talk about beer as a whole, it almost doesn't even to me make sense.
Hmm.
Cause like I mean, yeah,
I'll
there's
go
the
now.
like yeah, bye, thanks for coming. I guess let me but yeah, so anyway, that's a
No,
whole
valid though.
because like there's so many different types but there's like the one guy who owns the brewery versus like the regional player with 40 states. I mean, they're not the same. They're making the same product, but they're not the same. So I guess like who's it worse for? I guess this is that now I'm going into I was supposed to ask you something about Gen Z and now I'm like, no, let's do
No,
this.
that's a good question.
Well, I mean,
Who's
because the
it worse
problems are
for?
all different, right?
Yeah.
There's
Hmm.
Yeah.
Gen Z, which I'm sure we'll get into. That's a whole other situation. There's a
Those
lot of the
jerks. I love Gen Z. They're
Stop.
amazing. No, they're amazing. They ask questions. They're wonderful. Anyway,
In
continue.
Canada, it's Gen Z. But anyways, go ahead.
oh, interesting. I'm just mad about what they did to jeans, but
Oh.
Ooh,
so
girl.
this is like I have a 2-year-old, and so I am navigating the world of what I look like now, and it is different. And all of my
Mhm.
old jeans don't fit, and the style of jeans that I like, the skinny ones, I can't even buy them anymore. So,
eBay.
Mm.
oh God, good call.
Okay,
Good call.
eBay. You're welcome.
Well, so
Okay, anyway,
there's the
who's
Gen
it
Z
worse
of
for?
all, there's the health concerns, there's the macroeconomic issues at play. If you don't feel like you have too much fun money in your budget, do you really want to spend it on an extra six pack? No, probably not. And then I am not sure if this was on your bingo card for today, but there's the impacts on the Hispanic community, which is really
Yeah.
affecting
Mm.
a good chunk of the beer industry. And they also over index in beer compared to other communities.
Fun fact, Hispanic consumers are by far the best consumers of beer among demographic groups. I get this data from MRI Simmons actually usually every other year that we buy it. We spend a whole bunch of money on getting some demographic research from them and I get like some ridiculous number of demographic breakdowns. It's like 200 to 250 different demographic groups, and we're talking about household income, we're talking about region, some of the basics. You have cat owner and dog owner, and then there's actually sort of like 20 to 25 different like Hispanic and Latinx consumer based on the language they speak at home, how long they've been in the country, if they were born here, so on and so forth. But like if you organize all 200, 250 of those demographic groups by like indexing towards beer compared to like consumes beer more than any other form of alcohol, all of the groups at the top of the list are all of those 20 to 25 Hispanic and Latinx consumers. It's truly remarkable. So the fact that in America, the, there are, circumstances and policies in place that sort of have markedly showed that many Hispanic and Latin American consumers are pulling back on spending, are not going out as often. That hits beer, and frankly, took away the beer industry's biggest growth driver of the last pretty much decade in Mexican beers and Constellation brands and Modelo Especial.
Yeah, so I mean that is one, I guess, kind of bright spot in the last couple of years is that Mexican imports have been doing well. Is that mostly Latin American drinkers who maybe are drinking less now, I think is what I heard you say, or and so now Mexican imports were down and tariffs and all that sort of thing, or was it, non-Latin American consumers drinking Mexican imports and that's still doing okay? I'm looking for a bright spot, I guess.
No, oh, don't look
Ooh.
for those. How are you gonna do that? The way that Constellation typically talks about it, I think they say, right, it's not only um uh uh Hispanic and Latin American consumers that are consuming those beers, obviously. But they are still a very large chunk. It's sort of like I want to say like 50 to 60%. Do you remember that number off the top of your head, Jess? We've both reported on it a bunch of
Yeah,
times.
Chris, for Modelo, for
Yeah,
that
for
brand family, it's
Modelo.
about 50%.
Yeah.
Corona is a little bit less. I want to say it
Yeah.
hovers around like the 30 to 40% range. But for
Okay.
Modelo, it is certainly very, very
Yeah.
large.
So like that's a hit, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't take much of a pullback, right? We're not talking about, I mean, this is the thing that drives me wild, especially in the discussions about Gen Z, is sort of like the reporting that it's like a complete walking away, like a mass exodus from drinking or spending on beer or spending in general, but it doesn't take much of a pullback among a large and important consumer set to really impact sales.
hmm Jess, further thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, you can see it if Constellation Brands, which imports Modelo, Corona, Pacifico, Victoria, also does some wine and spirits, but they are the major importer of Mexican beers into the U.S. They are in some Circana track channels the number 2 largest beer vendor in the category behind only Anheuser-Busch. You can see it in their public financial activity since they're a publicly traded company. They recently shifted their financial guidance for their 2026 financial year down from, I think they were predicting they would be flat to up 2%. to now they're calling for expecting dollar sales to be down. I think down between 2 and 4%. So that's a big deal. And they've been trying to say they do a lot of investor calls. You can really kind of find what it seems they're thinking in a lot of different places. And, CEO Bill Newlands has been saying, like, we don't think this is structural, to bring that word back up, but they are finally starting to admit, like, hey, there is a problem with our consumer base. They are behaving much differently.
And we got to whip them into shape.
Oh no,
No,
no, that's
don't,
that's
no,
Whippings will
no.
continue until morale improves.
Improve. All right,
Oh,
let's
yikes.
yeah. All right, let's change. Well, let's go back a little because I want to know who's to blame
No.
Oh boy.
for this. And
How much time do you
yeah,
have?
I
It's
mean we
well,
don't have a lot of time. But I don't we're at that point now when everyone wants to blame. Like I remember growing up, I'm a millennial and people were like, "You and your avocado toast, it's why you can't afford a house." And I'm like, yeah, right." And now people are like, "Oh, Gen Z doesn't go out. They don't drink. They don't do this. They don't do that." Like, is this blame, is it accurate? Like, do they really not drink? Because, like, from personal experience, Pints and Panels, which is my, online business, most of my readers are 25-year-old men, and they seem very keyed up and
yeah.
interested. But I'm like, I'm a very small subsect. But so, like, what's going on here?
It's about a single digit percentage point difference in terms of the prevalence of any alcohol consumption. In the various studies and surveys that I look at, when you look at of age or college age, uh, whether people drink at all.
Hmm.
It's, the Gallup poll was bigger. The Gallup poll shows among younger drinkers sort of a bigger drop off. Some of the larger surveys that ask many, many, many more people about their consumption habits, you end up getting a somewhere in the sort of mid-single digit percentage point difference between this generation and older generations who say they drink at all. However, it's the frequency of consumption and the way they consume and when and how that I think is probably the bigger impact. So they do drink. It's just
Hmm.
that maybe not as often. And they do go out, but maybe to different places and with different goals and in different ways. And so the other thing that like I think is important is all of the oldest members of Gen Z were showing signs of this already in college age and early 20s, right? In college age, right when they shouldn't be drinking technically. But then by the time they reach their sort of late 20s, have started to consume alcohol, even if they didn't before. Those sort of prevalence levels jump back up to historic levels or close. Um, and so that signals to me that like we're talking about a different attitude towards alcohol, at least among a subset. Because listen, there are still plenty of Gen Zers out there partying their hearts out,
Hmm.
and bless them. Like that still happens. That's still real. We're not talking again about a mass exodus here. Um,
Yeah, there's some data from our friends at Rabobank. Ricard Nesson does a great job at analyzing a lot of this stuff. And he has found that when you compare how much Gen Z spends on alcohol, they're proportionate to all the other generations just about. So Gen Z, who, is able to drink, spends 0.72% of their money on alcohol, which is the exact same as millennials. Gen X is a little lower at 0.65. The average across all generations is 0.73. And I will let you guys guess who is spending the most of their money on booze.
Other than me individually.
It is the boomers,
Oh,
which,
wow. That's
yeah, I
super
mean,
interesting.
well, that's who has money too. So,
Well, exactly. But and like the thing that's different, the really major difference is that Gen Z doesn't have money, right?
right.
So like it's like the percentage of their money that they're spending is the same, but like the
Right.
actual amount of money that they
Yeah.
have is way, way, way less. And that's part of that's natural, right? Like a lot of people in their 20s don't have a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of money in my 20s. But and why do boomers spend more on alcohol? Well, they don't have kids to take care of. They're like, maybe they've got some grandkids to throw some money at, but like, what else are they spending money on? Maybe they already own their house. Maybe they, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's more time in their day uh, to that's not across the board. I'm generalizing. I guess I'm
Yeah.
just thinking
No.
about my parents who are both retired and are living such a great life.
I
My mom lives her best life. I love it.
you like my mom and her gentleman companion are the most social people I know. Like they're out every night.
Ah,
Oh,
He's the
bless
most
them.
passionate craft beer drinker I know of, and he's 81. So
oh,
not
wow.
boomer, right? Which is
Yeah.
Yeah.
can't really pretend anything good for craft beer. But
Um, the other thing that I've certainly read a lot about is how, first of all, that Gen Z is, not spending money on alcohol. And so thank you for dispelling that. But also that they're the ones kind of driving the growth in non-alc. So I'm wondering, is that true? And then speaking of non-alc, then we've certainly seen, Guinness and Heineken, Guinness Zero and Heineken Zero Zero kind of all over. I've seen a whole bunch of craft brewers releasing non-alcs. Is this a thing? Is that growth real?
yeah, it's real. It's tiny, but it is real. As Chris had alluded to before, one of the biggest success stories in beer in the last decade is Mexican imports. Another was hard seltzer, which we can get into. But the other like current real one is non-alcoholic beer, but it is still teeny, teeny, tiny. Like right now, I'm looking at Circana data, which covers multi-outlet and convenience stores, which is basically every chain store you can think of that sells beer. Non-alcoholic beer dollars are up 22.5%, which is great, the biggest growth of the whole category, but it still only accounts for 1.3% of all dollars spent on beer.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's
Yeah.
nice. It's nice to have something that's growing. And obviously, Don, as you mentioned, it's attracting lots of new entrants, but it is still teeny, teeny, tiny. I mean, it's got there's some aspects of non-alc that make it much more attractive in that you could sell it directly to consumers if you wanted. That's a whole undertaking, and companies do it. Like Athletic has a really strong DTC program, but
Right.
it's real. It's happening. It's tiny.
Yeah, I was like, I think I'm pulling up our volume data, and I was like, I think we just got to one share, maybe, of total beer volume.
Okay.
uh Last
Yeah.
year, like we're just pushing up against that one share point. So yeah, it's still small, but it is getting bigger, and I am encouraged that it's not off the charts growth, that it is solid growth. It is suggestive to me of something that can last longer. um and we're also seeing brewers of all sizes play, right? The big growth story in non-alc this year is actually the Mick Ultra Zero. And
Ah,
so
There's a Mick Ultra Zero.
I
There
did not know
sure
that.
is. It's
there sure
huge.
is.
It's
It is
huge.
huge. It is
Huge.
already one of the top non-alc beer brands uh, sold in the US at this
Because Mick
point,
Ultra
out
itself
of the
was
gate.
doing quite well, was it not?
Mhm.
It still is. Mick Ultra is still
Okay. And
doing.
now Mick
Mick
Ultra
Ultra is
Zero.
one of the growth stories. Mick
Okay.
Ultra is one of the things have slowed down a little bit more recently. The summer was, as if things weren't soft already, the summer was particularly surprising and scary for a lot of brands, including brands that had been doing better. But Mick Ultra is still doing fine. At this point, it's looking like it'll end the year, up solidly, sort of low mid single digits again. Mick Ultra, for the better part of a decade, 15 years, the two growth stories in beer were Modelo Especial and Michelob Ultra.
Hmm.
And this year, that Modelo has sort of led the way a little bit, usually a little bit faster than Mick Ultra, but this year that has reversed, and Modelo is having a harder time, and Mick Ultra is doing better.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll be right back with more from Chris and Jess after a word from our sponsor.
Ariana, Callista, Tradition, Yule Melon, Select. RahrBSG sources these German hop varieties and more directly from German growers through their cooperative organization, HVG. Founded in 1953, HVG has grown to be one of the most important hop suppliers worldwide. In addition to supplying a large part of the German hop crop to brewers worldwide, HVG also processes hops into pellets, extract, and other hop products. Where would beer be without HVG? For the best selection, contact RahrBSG.
This program is brought to you by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, where trailblazing runs in the family. From crafting a movement with their iconic pale ale to taking the IPA haze craze nationwide with Hazy Little Thing, it's an adventurous spirit you can taste in every sip. Find your next favorite beer wherever fine beverages are sold. With new brews for every season, there's always something to discover. Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, still family owned, operated, and argued over.
Okay, so you've laid kind of the groundwork of the overall beer industry. Most of our listeners, though, like craft beer, so let's talk about that. What's going right in craft beer?
That's a great question, Don. Good way to phrase that.
Do you have an answer?
Well, let's see. Honestly, it's everything that you would probably expect. It's New Belgium's Voodoo Ranger,
Mm-hmm.
everything hazy and imperial. All
In
of that is doing well.
stovepipes,
Well,
particularly.
hey, I have a
Yeah.
stovepipes for sure. I have a question for you guys. How does your audience think of New Belgium these days? Not mean like do they like them or not like them? Like do we consider them craft or do we not?
I would consider them. I mean, I know they're owned by the Japanese, right? But I would consider them craft,
I consider
Yes,
right?
them craft.
the Japanese government owns New
Well,
Belgium.
no,
I'm
no, but
I'm
you know what?
joking.
It's
I'm joking.
I couldn't remember. It's Kieran, right?
It's
Kieran
Kieran.
owns.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
it's
I
Kieran.
didn't want to. I didn't want to come and be like Sapporo owns them, and then I get some reader that's like, well, no, but Kieran, and I was just like, we don't have those
Sapporo is
readers actually.
Stone.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting, Jessica, that
Asahi's
you.
also in the mix, kind of, not
Asahi
really.
is up
Yeah,
in the facility. Why can't
In
the Octopi
Octopi.
facility?
yeah,
Octopi.
Octopi.
Mhm. So okay,
Um,
Anyways,
I was
I
just
would
gonna say
consider.
I thought
Yeah,
it was interesting that you brought up Voodoo Ranger specifically because I don't think of New Belgium other than Voodoo Ranger now.
Right? Right.
well, that's because there is almost nothing new about I'm exaggerating, but like
No, you're
that
not.
portfolio but barely really,
Yeah.
and less than I didn't crunch these numbers in the last, for sort of year to date 2025, but I mean that portfolio is Voodoo Ranger at this point. They tried to renew Fat Tire and it has not gone the way that they wanted it to, and they're sort of thankful that Voodoo Ranger continues to do well. Although this year it's, in aggregate that portfolio is not quite as strong as it had been in prior years. But yeah, no, it's taken over that business. That business is the Voodoo Ranger brand, which is less and less. I think it feels to me, I forget what I was looking at a week or two ago, but it was looking like they were separating that even further from the sort of New Belgium name. In one way, I really wish I remembered what evidence I had for that rather than just sort of throwing that out there into the ether with no backup. But that's what it
I
felt
would
like
be
to me.
Yeah, I would be super interested in how Gen Z thinks of Voodoo Ranger. Do they think of it as being connected to New Belgium at all? Because
Mm,
sometimes it's very small in the packaging.
hmm
This is
No.
just a funny story, but a few years ago, Brewbaum was doing a panel discussion in Denver. I'm not sure if it was during Craft Brewers Conference or GABF, but we live stream it, and their former CEO Steve Fetchheimer was on stage with me, and my husband texted me later. He's like, "Yeah, the fat tire guy said blah blah." I was like, "I don't think anybody in the world would call him the fat tire guy right now, except for you."
Correct.
I think that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
so
are
they're doing
like
well. So is Sierra Nevada. There's some good numbers
Hmm.
coming out of Sierra Nevada, which if you were a craft purist, that probably warms your heart a bit.
Mm.
Hmm.
is that from their imperial? Is that the like imperial IPAs? Is it the juicy thing, the peachy thing, or whatever, or is it?
The
It's
Big
hazy
Little
little
Thing,
thing.
Hazy Little Thing is still strong. It
Okay.
continues to grow again and again and again. They reformulated Big Little Thing, and so that's given them a little jolt of growth this year. But they're also getting a bunch of growth from from the non-alc portfolio that they've built up. It
Hmm.
is
Trail
they are
Pass.
sort of the clear number two in craft NA at this point behind
Mhm.
Athletic, and it is solid.
Interesting.
So that's also a big help for them. And then they're really excited about this new pills that they
I am
have.
really excited about this new pills.
It's a cool thing. I still haven't gotten my hands on it yet, but that'll happen at some point. I literally mean get my hands on it because I'm really curious about the buying experience of those smaller cans, right? Of that sort of it's not eight, it's like 8.4 ounces, right?
8.4,
Because
yeah.
right? Um
It gives me real like pony vibes,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
little
High Life
babies.
Pony. And like that's such a it's either a flex and it's gonna be like amazing or it's gonna be like I don't know, like and explode in their face. Because like in my head, craft beer is 16 ounces, for good or for worse. I'm not particularly keen on 16 ounces. I wish everything came in at 12, but that's me being a curmudgeon. Like, why are you excited about the pill? Because I think that there's that light lager trend. It's the cyclical,
hmm
everyone's doing these like vintage Miller Lite style
hmm
light lagers. Like, why are we like turning the needle from like how do we get from Voodoo Ranger and its
Yeah, that
stovepipe to Pilsner in an
in
8.4
an
ounce
8.4.
can?
Well, I think it's recognizing that we're talking about different people. We're talking about different consumers and different beer buyers and different beer drinkers.
Hmm.
It's not like those are going after the same folks. One of the other big growth stories in beer this year is garage beer, and it's
Yes,
huge. It
it's
is
huge.
massive, right? And like the Kelsey brothers play a role in that, right? Like I
Hmm.
think having those names and those people and those specific people, by the way, it's not just like we've seen celebrity involvement, we've seen football player involvement in beer before. It has not gone this way. And so I think, that adds to it, but it's not just that. And I think what you're seeing is a lot of people recognizing that there is interest and demand and thirst for beer that is beer. Beer is that is sort of uncomplicatedly beer. That the brand sort of communicates that simplicity and that ease. Um, there's certainly nostalgia in that because it sort of references a simpler time culturally, not just within beer, but just sort of within our world. There, it's easy to look out the window or open up your phone and be completely overwhelmed and probably depressed by the
Hmm.
world around you. And so having something that's just sort of simple and easy and good matters. But I think the other interesting part of it, and this is where I'm interested to see how Sierra's Pills fits into this, because it's doing something different, right? Like I know Jess had a similar conversation with some of the executives as I did a few weeks ago, but like they really emphasize sort of the premium nature of it, that it's a trade up for a bunch of things. But one of the things that Garage Beer has going for it is the price, right? It's not playing at a traditional craft price point. It's playing at a Mick Ultra price point. And not to go back to Mick Ultra, but one of the reasons that brand has done so well is that it's had the price point that it's at to itself for years. It does not play quite as high as imports, but it is a trade up. It's a premiumization to Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light, and there simply has not been another brand that's been in that sort of spot for very long. And now it is finally being joined by a lot of other brands, and Garage is one of them.
Hmm.
Do we know the price point of Sierra Nevada pills off the top of your head? I mean, probably not, but like,
The the
what?
suggested retail price for the 8 pack of 8.4 ounce cans is sort of line priced or in line with what a 6 pack of their standard lineup for Pale Ale, for Torpedo, for
Okay,
Hazy
so
Little
like
Thing.
10 to 12 bucks, probably.
Yeah, depending on the state, depending on
Yeah.
the market. Yeah.
Ooh, okay. Jess, do you have any further thoughts on light lagers or like even the rise of Czech lager in the craft beer space? I don't know if that like has any correlation. I don't know if it does or not.
So I do. And I was
Oh,
just listening to your Czech Lager episode. But what I think we can also kind of trace this back to, and this is going to sound completely antithetical, and I'm sure some of your listeners are going to be like, you are a crazy lady. But I think we can look at hard seltzer a little bit. The hard seltzer
mm,
boom times, like what, like 2018, 2019, 2020, everybody was drinking Truly or a White Claw because they liked, the 12-ounce size, the reasonable amount of alcohol, the 100 calories. And then from there, we started to see a proliferation of like 100-calorie IPAs. Remember those days?
Yep.
And from there, we saw some swerving into NA from brands that hadn't been doing it before. And I think the natural response here for people who liked the ABV profile, the calorie profile, but like the taste of beer is these light lagers. So you got to think about what these light lagers are satisfying in terms of an occasion. Like this is what you bring to a cookout or a tailgate, or this is also what you can just enjoy on the couch on a Friday afternoon. So these beers, I like to kind of think of them as grandpa beers. Like I think they're filling a variety of need states that there wasn't really anything in craft that was necessarily the obvious choice for all of these occasions.
I like
Does that
that
make
phrase,
sense?
need states.
Unfortunately, I have a master's in marketing and worked in craft beer marketing for a lot of years. So I can blurt off any number of ridiculous corporate speak terms, but
I
I
love it.
don't want to anger you or myself.
Okay, so a lot of our listeners either own or work at craft breweries. What's a non-obvious trend, or maybe it's early days of a trend that you think craft breweries should be paying attention to? Should they all be making high protein, functional, superfood infused, all natural, non-GMO beer?
Oh
Oh
my God, no, I
God.
hope
Oh
not.
God. No,
No, no. It
no.
would be like, here's the thing, like you could do that, but you'd have a really hard time talking about it. Like according to the TTB, you're not allowed to make any statements that your product would have on, the health of a drinker.
Okay.
So you could do all the work to make a protein infused beer but you would not reap the benefits of all of the work and R&D that went into it. And I don't know that it's hidden or not obvious, but I think something that is going to pick up even more steam than it has is fruited wheat beers. I think we're seeing a resurgence there
Hmm.
because that does a lot. It brings in it brings in different consumers. It brings in women who craft desperately needs. I think there's something there, and we're seeing it in terms of brands like Cali Squeeze out on the West Coast. That's something that's been doing really, really well. I think it just all comes in how you package it. If you frame it up as a lifestyle product rather than a craft beer, I think you're going to do a lot better.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with quote unquote mid strength. Uh, this is partially selfish. I love a sub 4% beer so deeply. I love hitting in that 3% range, 3.5. Uh, uh, but this actually got a call out this week, or the week we're recording this, from Matt Gasioch from the Brewers Association in a post about Gen Z. Uh, and I like the reasoning that he had behind it, is that mid, and I frankly don't like the term mid strength. I think a better term would do better. But that there's an argument to be made that it helps. Part of the whole Gen Z thing is like consciousness about how they're appearing and consciousness of not being intoxicated, and those swirling health concerns around alcohol around it. Like, so if you can pull back on the alcohol a little bit but still provide a flavorful, interesting experience, there's a way to attract those folks with that. The flavor profile that they are most interested, by the way, this post also showed, is fruity. So to Jess's point, throw some fruit in there. Maybe use a wheat beer as a base, because bring the ABV down a little bit, and there are opportunities there. There's, at least out here in New York where I live, Saranac launched one of those earlier in the year. I can think of a bunch of much smaller sort of taproom based breweries that have those options. I do an event at a brewery every month, and they have a 3.8% table beer, and I'm drinking it the whole time. And there are bigger players that are at least looking at this and are planning a bigger launch for 2026. So I think stay tuned on that space.
Hey.
Cool. So last question. Are there any final takeaways that you want our listeners to know? Anything that we didn't discuss? Anything that's on your mind? I mean, I know that's it's a very large thing to ask, but I'm just curious if there's something that we missed or anything you want to go back to. Chris, we can start with you.
There are 3 or 4 billion things we
I,
could.
oh,
Yeah,
sure.
there's
Oh,
like,
sure.
do you want to just keep recording for the next week or so?
I
Um,
mean, I like sleep though, so.
yeah, oh yeah, we can take breaks for that.
Oh,
Um,
lovely.
uh, the I think the thing that I just want to insert because we haven't talked about it in depth, but it's circled around a bunch of comments, and including one that I just made, is the health concerns around alcohol. I think
Mm,
the concerns are real. The story is out there. A lot of times, since I pay a huge amount of attention to this and do a lot of reporting on it, a lot of that reporting gets a lot of things wrong and is driven by rhetoric that is not always super supported. Um, uh, it's a little bit of a mind bend, and getting your arms around it is difficult, but it's not as bad. It's not as bad as it is painted. But I think the concerns are real, and it is making people rethink their consumption, which
hmm
honestly, there's a really good part of that. I think it's great that a lot more consumers are sort of questioning, hey, how have I been drinking? And is that the way that I want to keep drinking? That's a healthy thing for people to do. But a lot of the sort of big headlines and scary stories out there are not always as supported by the science um, as you would sort of hope for them to be, including in
mm,
real big, well-known publications. Scrutinize things, and frankly, it all comes back to, I think, our gut sense of alcohol. Like, yeah, this can get dangerous. There are downsides possible here. Is real and is sort of closer to the truth. Uh, there are upsides, there are downsides, and be aware for yourself about where those lines are. Um, I could talk about that for far too long,
Yeah.
so I'm just
No,
going to
I,
shut
I
up. I'm
like
just going
that.
to close that down.
Well, Chris, I'm glad you brought that up because there are things that you know, if you're a business owner in this space, you hear these things and you probably feel a little discouraged, but there's things that you can do, particularly for consumers who are reconsidering their relationship with alcohol, whether that's, we've talked about all these things, lower ABV products, smaller package sizes. There's definitely ways out there that you can give people something that they can feel good about, you know? One more thing, pivoting totally, that I
Yes.
think is really important to consider is that uh, when Gen Z is studied in terms of like the ones who are of legal drinking age, the 21 to 25-year-olds, the majority of that generation that consumes alcohol is women. Women have edged out men in terms of, you know, being among the people who raise their hand and say, yes, I do drink alcohol. And I think that's just something to think about
mm,
in terms of how you speaking to your consumers, what products you're offering, what imagery you're using. Everything is really a lifestyle brand these days. So when you are putting your you know your Instagram together, think about who you're showing because the young women do be drinking and they will eventually have money. So don't put them off before they even discover your brand.
I'm going to
That
co-sign that. Well said, Jess.
Thank you.
that is great. That's very interesting. Before we let you go, can you share either social media handles or newsletter website? How can people keep track of what you're doing and all the news that you guys share? Jess, you want to
Sure.
start? Oh,
Oh,
go
sure.
ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Sorry. I stepped into the void with my non-answer.
Oh, go, go,
We
go.
we here at Beer Marketers Insights are super old school. I think you can maybe still find us on X at Beer Insights, but I'm not sure about that. It's really, you should find us on LinkedIn, especially if you're in the industry. You can find me and find Beer Marketers Insights there. And you can check out our newsletters at beerinsights.com. That's gonna be the best way to find us and get in touch with us.
Awesome. Jess?
And we are at brewbound.com. We offer two different newsletters, a paid version for insiders and a free version, which is not quite as in depth. We also have a free weekly podcast, which you can find as the Brewbound Podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. And you can find me on Instagram at BrewboundJess. I don't really know what I do with that. Sometimes I post, sometimes I don't. But with the demise of X, that's kind of where I've migrated to. I'm on Blue Sky, but
But
I
nobody else is.
Man, it's
Yeah.
rough.
It's rough out
It's
there.
sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss the old days.
Yeah.
Mm.
Awesome. This was great. I learned a lot. So thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys.
Okay, so Em, how do you feel now about the beer industry?
I don't feel great, but I know I'll feel better in the future.
Yeah.
You know, like things are, it's a cycle, you know, like things are down, but then things will go back up again. Like I'm not like it's a circle. So
Yeah.
I feel good. What about yourself, Don?
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that both our guests explicitly stated this is not a permanent change. This is
Hmm.
something cyclical. And that I'm glad as well that they were, without too much hesitation, even though we kind of joked about it when we asked, they were able to talk about highlight, good things and trends that our listeners to craft beer lovers and craft beer brewers can glom onto. So I am cautiously optimistic.
Me too.
Everybody, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow us on social media at allaboutbeer. And if you want to support this show, that's not just for advertisers, but also for listeners as well, please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to support this show and others. And if you have questions for the experts, please email podcast@allaboutbeer.com. That's also the email for feedback, suggestions, or to inquire about supporting this show through advertising. Em, how can people reach out to you?
I am at Pints and Panels on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Instagram, and my website is pintsandpanels.com. What about you, Don?
I am at the Dawn of Beer on X, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram. And on Facebook, I'm at the Beer Dawn. And people can drop me an email. I'm don@thedawnofbeer.com. If you enjoyed the All About Beer podcast, please go to your favorite podcasting app and give us a 5-star review, or drop an email to our sponsors letting them know that you appreciate them supporting the show. Which advertisers? These ones. Here's a final word from our sponsors.
Need ingredients and supplies that deliver consistent, high-quality beer? RahrBSG has you covered. From hops to malt to yeast to unbeatable customer service, they are dedicated to your success. RahrBSG, ingredients for greatness.
This program is brought to you by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, where trailblazing runs in the family. From crafting a movement with their iconic pale ale to taking the IPA haze craze nationwide with Hazy Little Thing, it's an adventurous spirit you can taste in every sip. Find your next favorite beer wherever fine beverages are sold. With new brews for every season, there's always something to discover. Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. Still family owned, operated, and argued over.
This show is produced by All About Beer. Visit allaboutbeer.com for articles, notes on this show and others, and to connect via the newsletter and social media. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Keep drinking. We need you.
No, Don, no.